stream up and running. So I'm now checking if we actually streaming to YouTube, and we are. So that's great
That's
news.
amazing.
So tonight we have Nicholas on the show, um, and we're going to talk about Azure Chaos Studio. And as you just witnessed, there's always chaos.
Yeah,
And we're gonna look in how we're gonna break our application. So with that, I'm gonna give the floor to Nicholas, and we're gonna
sure.
enjoy his session. Hopefully, if
Sure.
something technical happens, I will jump in and be back with you all as soon as possible.
No worries. Let me just quickly. Uh, can you see my screen? Or
Yeah,
is
we
it
can, Nick. We can. We're good.
full screen, right? Or is it what?
We see your presenter view right now.
Oh,
So you
sorry.
have to. Yep, you're good.
Sorry. 1 minute.
We're on the big screen, I think.
Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Okay. You
Yeah,
on? Can you see now?
we
Yeah.
can. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Hi everyone. So sorry about that. A little technical issue. So welcome to my session on how to use Azure Chaos Studio to improve application workload in the cloud. So who am I? Before we get started, I just want to say a huge thank you for Daniel to invite me to Go Azure speak and present his Go Azure community. And so let me give you a brief summary of who I am. So I'm a senior platform engineer at Kainos, that partner, Microsoft partner, and Microsoft Azure MVP and MCT, recent MCT. And I'm focused on infrastructure as code, DevOps as well, especially Azure itself. I'm a blogger, speaker, and enjoy learning about Azure. Some of the community, I'm a big fan of community, helping others and give back to community and open source community. So these are some of the community I've been involved with. So the global AI, cloud native community in my podcast. So you can follow me on social media, my blog or social media. So in this session, I'm going to give you an overview what's case engineering and Chaos Studio. So I'm going to talk before I'm going to get started. I'm give you why is Chaos Studio and why I use it. Chaos Engineering, a walkthrough of Azure Chaos Studio, a demo, and best practices of using Azure Chaos Studio, and some conclusion what I've thought. So what's Chaos? Sorry. Okay, so what's chaos engineering? First, chaos engineering is a methodology that helps developer improve the reliability of your system by keep breaking production and test it for any failures. So before chaos engineer, the DevOps and SRE, it's a methodology that build and deliver software more reliable, while a chaos engineer is more testing the reliability of your system by really hammering your production and just doing lots of tests to see if it meets the production requirements. Some of these could be improving system resiliency to failure, reducing downtime. Some of the important factors when doing chaos engineering is that you need to minimize any what if something scenario questions that could happen in production, and you can do this using a technique called fault injection as well. And it's literally, like I mentioned before, it's like bombing keep hammering production and make it more reliable for each test you run. So an example of chaos engineer could be like a huge spike on your CPU load or memory load. So one example is that imagine your CPU, your machine is under pressure and it didn't do any like you of like intensive workload in your like database. This could be like in real world scenarios, like on Black Friday when everyone go on sales, that will be hammering actually the system of the backend with the computer. Be like having like so many stress on the CPU, and it could be memory load as well. It could be network load, network failure. So those are things that those are some of the examples that can happen as well. So you can also test it for more of a complex architecture. So this could be whether it's having whether testing your availability zone from is working according or through a Cosmos DB. You can also integrate it with load testing. So you can do Chaos Studio, Azure Chaos Studio with load testing of the application as well. So when to apply chaos engineer? So there is these are some of the stages that I think it's very good to apply chaos engineer. You need to apply in 3 stages: development, production, and failure analysis. So the deployment development stage is identify like pre-production and any problem before it goes into production, before it goes too far and then it hit the production workload. And the production is when you identify any issues that in staging environment, and the failure analysis is keep reproducing the issues that happen on development and production and development, and make a note of it. I keep monitoring. So failure analysis monitoring of it, the issues as well. So all of these principles that I mentioned before is part of the best practice of principle of chaos. So it's being used on production own environment, but you can also test it on development stage of as well. So this is so with Chaos Engineer, it come with separate tools and how you can use it. Chaos Engineer is multi-cloud, so you can use it for various cloud diagnostic. You can use for Azure, AWS, as well as Kubernetes. So there is some of the tool on the right hand side. It's like Chaos Mesh, Chaos Toolkit, Chaos Blade, Chaos Cube. So those are some of the. So Chaos Toolkit is the one that handles failure and faults in your Kubernetes cluster. And while Kremlin, it's you see on the right hand side here, it's like a shield, right hand side. That's Kremlin, so that's cross-platform with Azure and AWS. So I break this down into like the Chaos Mesh, Chaos Cube, and Cube Invader. So these are some of the tools that handle Kubernetes, while infrastructure-based will be Chaos Blade. So Chaos Monkey is sorry, this is Chaos Monkey. That was the toolkit. Toolkit. So Chaos Monkey is a new tool for only for production for that helps like that's built in Chaos Kong that kill a region if you want to test instance in production as well. So I want this slide is about introducing Chaos Studio. So Chaos Studio, I think it first introduced in 2 years ago, not last year, the other year. And it's a tool that designed for you to test and improve the workload of your system. So it could be like help testing improving the resiliency of your system for any faults and failure. This can be integrated with Terraform and DevOps, like infrastructure as code and Bicep. You can also integrate it with Azure DevOps, support CI/CD as well. So you can do continuous load testing, like I mentioned previously as well. So to set it up, the Chaos Studio, all you need to do is create some enabling on your resources and set up experiments. So where experiment could be bit of like tests what you want to test on your resources, and your enabling resource could be enabling on your target resource, for example, Cosmos DB or Key Vault. And so I've attached so recently, I think last year, it came out with a pricing on Chaos Studio. So Chaos Studio is approximately like 10 pence per action minute. So I think that means like any experiment that you run, it costs 10 cents. So it's quite cool. So it's so to get started in Chaos Studio, there's 3 steps that it supports. So I'll just run you create a profile first. That could be any faults. You define any faults failure that you want to inject your system, whether it's CPU spike, memory load. Set a target. Target could be resources, Azure resources, and create an experiment. So that's just pretty much like your fault that you want to create. So it could be like testing it for network latency, server capacity, and execute and monitor the experiment. So Chaos Studio also support in Azure Portal REST API, and you have 2 faults, the agent fault as well as the service fault. So the agent fault is like a standalone fault that agent that you install like in VM, in a VM accessor, like Chaos agent. And a service a direct fault is a managed service that's been injected in the resource itself through a managed service provider, and your code, it could be your infrastructure code as well. So it's also, you can also use REST API, and before you use like Chaos Studio, Azure Chaos Studio, you will need to enable the Microsoft Chaos provider, and I will show you how to enable that in a minute when we go through the demo. So the fault library is a list of faults that for Microsoft that you can use to test your resources for experiments running it by hammering the resource, the infrastructure. So how does it work is, like I previously mentioned, Azure Chaos Studio have 2 agent, the service direct agent that's run against the resources that's not in the VM, anything that's not a VM, for example, app service, Cosmos DB, and the agent base. So the agent base is like it's like an agent that's installed on your VM or VMSS for as well, but it can use as well as like AKS as well. So to get started with an experiment, you can define it in numbers of steps. So in an experiment, when you create it, you have a number of steps that runs sequentially, and each steps will have branches, which is that let you create add more fault in a branch. So and then each then containing action. So a step can contain branches and action, which contain the fault, and then you can define like a target. So that target is your resources as your resource itself. So to explain this, on the right-hand side is like a diagram of what I just put from Microsoft Light. So you have the branches here, could be like your fault, CPU fault here on the right-hand side, like 10 minutes. And you have second is the number, another branch. So you want to test it with 2 faults in one experiment, but within 1 steps here. So you can also add another steps and have 2 faults as well with 2 actions as well. And then the selector for what I mentioned is the actual resources, your Azure resource itself. So I'm gonna show you how you can deploy. In this demo, I'm gonna show you how you can actually quickly use Azure Chaos Studio to test your system for any faults. So I'm going to show you 2 experiments. I'm going to show you how you can set it up best as well, and it'll show you how you can actually monitor it. Let me show my screen. Okay. So we have, sorry, 2FA. Just let me, okay, cool. Okay, so if you go to, let me just quickly run it. Sorry, it doesn't like my request again. Apologies. Let me just cancel that. Okay. Let me close that screen. Budget portal, right? Yeah. Okay, let's just do another one. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. To save you trouble, I'm just using another browser. You can see my screen right, Daniel? Okay, cool.
Yep, we can.
Okay. Taking a while. Okay, so I'll show you something. So to get a list of faults, you can use on Azure Chaos Studio, you can find it through this page, Azure Chaos Studio Fault and Action Library. So this tells you a list of faults.
Nick,
That
can you
yeah.
zoom in a bit? It's a bit small.
Okay. Yeah. So
Fantastic.
this gives you a list of faults in Azure that you can test it again with your experiment. So like Key Vault, NSG, Service Vault, and it tells you what kind of like agent it used. So for example, this virtual machine, it used Service Direct. And so let me see if it's come in yet. It's logged in yet. Azure Portal should be working now. Too many. Okay, cool. Finally. Okay. Sorry, it took a while to get started. First thing what you need to do is get started is you need to enable that case fault on your subscription. So it's I enable on my, so go to your subscription and go to resource provider, and then you type in chaos. Can't spell. Yeah, so this is the one that should be enabled on your tenant, on your subscription, and it should say registered. And then that's when you can get started with Chaos Studio. Okay, to get started, I'm going to show you how to use it. So you just navigate to the Chaos Studio on the portal, Chaos Studio. And like I mentioned previously, you have a lot. Targets is what you use to assign the resources, and then there's different targets for service and agent. So you can I've assigned it to. So I'm going to show you how this works. So I have an agent that's been enabled, agent base on a demo 01 here, and I've got a cluster, so AKX cluster and a service direct as well. So I'm going to first show you how you can do the monitor, like do the AKS one first, and I'll show you how quickly it is. To create an experiment, you just create file new and then give it a name. So I'll just create one before I'll just show you. Yeah, this one. Yeah, so once you create one, it will ask for an experiment, and then it asks for steps. I give it a name AKS pod failure, and branch one AKS failure, and you need to add a fault. So when you click add fault, there is numerous fault that on the list that you can choose from. Yeah, and the one that I've chosen is, so once you added the faults, you need to add a target resources, like I mentioned, it's through Azure resources. So I've added one here already previously, and it's called AKS Chaos Mesh Pod Chaos. And you can see it would get deployed on the namespace Go Azure, and it would try to hammer the pod in that namespace for duration of 15 minutes. And in this cluster, cluster AKS demo. So I'm going to show you two versions how to do it in agentless, which is this, and then agent as well. So to get this running, I had to first thing, this is my VS Code. I had to install Azure Mesh, Chaos Mesh on my cluster, and I've already installed it already. So I'm gonna just, so when I get get repo, and then yeah. So once you add these column like command, I got this from Microsoft Learn, but you can also, it's just free tool that you can use to test the Azure Chaos Studio, and it would install some pod on the namespace here. It would install the chart as well. I've created that, and then I created under like Azure Vote app as well. So it's just mini like interface of front-end app. I put it on the namespace Go Azure, so all of them would be on that Go Azure, and you can see, yep, all of them is on Go Azure namespace. And to get that working, I had to use this YAML and put it under a different namespace, Chaos Testing, and you can see it's linked to the same namespace, Go Azure. So Go Azure namespace. And so once you run that, you can see, once you run that, you should get pod similar to this because I've already, so Go Azure. Yeah, this is running. Yes, because I'm testing it. I was testing it yesterday, and that's normal. Let me see if we can. Okay, so once you run that, and let me you just click start an experiment, and then that will just trigger the default, the testing. So I've tested one previously already. Let me move this here, over here. Yep, so that should finish in a minute. And I will show you how you can do the agent after. And to get this, so once you test it, you always, once you start experiment, always monitor it to see if you can, the actual result of it. And let's see, I've got, yep, so I've got, I can use, so I'm going to use Grafana to monitor it. 1 minute. And you can give it a minute and it should be success afterwards. You can see when I monitor to go Azure one, it's getting hammered because the CPU is spiking up high. So you can use Azure App Insight, or for this instance of the demo, I use Grafana because I've attached it to the my AKS cluster, and I can see it's working expected because it's spiking up the CPU as well. So the next thing is, while we wait for that, I want to show you another experiment. So like I mentioned, you can use various experiments. So the CPU pressure is different. So to get uh, okay, so let me enable that. Okay, so for agent base, you need to create and manage identity, which I've created already. So let me just go back here. And you can get the list of like permission, because I think for this to work, I gave this here. I think, yeah, so list of permission you need to create for it is here. Sorry, bear with me a minute. This one. Yeah. So this tell you what permit you need to give to the resource, for example, AKS cluster to listen to the Chaos Studio. I think it's, yeah. So for VM, it would be Azure Virtual Machine contributors, and for AKS will be Azure Kubernetes Service Cluster user role or admin role as well. So this is a list. So to get to it is supported resource type. This is quite good resource to get to. Let me just go back to the VM. Let me show you this how you can trigger how you can do the CPU one, for example. I've tested this before. So this is another option. So when I mentioned it can hold different steps and different action. So this point, in this instance, you can tell it's another experiment I've created for the VM here, CPU pressure failure. And I've created one on CPU pressure here, a duration 10 minutes. And then I've added the action CPU pressure. And then for next steps, I use a similar approach, and then I use it, next action equal killing the process, which kill cmd.exe. So that would just kill it afterwards. And then you can add more steps as you want as well for each of the at faults. So I've run this. I can run it again. But the idea is just create hammer rate and monitoring the resources, just test it, the experiment. I could wait for it, but I didn't want to wait. Okay, it's manage identities of resources. Yep, so sorry, I'll fix that later, but I got one working yesterday, but so you need one managed identity created. Okay, so let's just create one from scratch and show you. So enable. Which one I can do this one? No, not this one. So yep, so I've created a managed identity. So you need to create a managed identity and assign it to the resources in order to give it permission to it. And then afterwards, you will just continually monitor the VM for any fault as well. You can use, for example, the built-in monitor, or like I mentioned, App Insight for the monitoring as well. So you can see it's been spiking because I was doing some yesterday. So in conscious of time, I'm just go to my presentation and let me just quickly show. Yeah, here. Where am I going? Yeah, so some of the best practice of using like Azure Chaos Studio is that start small with simple experiments, like where like I mentioned with like CPU pressure, it could be like network load or so, and then gradually bring it up. And second thing is that you need to have define a clear objective on what you want to meet. So you want, in order to uh, this could be like include numerous testing, or before it goes to production, you want your pre-production, define like numerous like tests or experiment that you want as well, make objective clear, define achievable scenario. This could be like try to mimic real world scenario and make it very identical to a real world scenario that could affect your production workload, your KS profile. And after you create your experiment with Azure Chaos Studio, always Azure monitor the resources. Like I mentioned in my demo, I use Grafana to monitor my pod, but you can use the simple things like App Insights to monitor as well. Just you can use it. Just that is to monitor the resources to see if it's expected, to ensure the application is behaving, just to experiment. And then you can, if it's not, then you can just go back and tweak the X file. So another factor is that always try to communicate and collaborate with different teams, because Azure Chaos Studio, when you have different like teams with like developers, platforms and stuff, and security teams, you always communication is important. And in order to get perfect experiment, you want to communicate what the objective, like all the points that I mentioned before, the previous level objective, this scenario as well, and monitoring, so that every different team, every teams is on the same pace, and always try to automate as possible. So this could be like using infrastructure code, whether it's Azure Chaos Studio support like uh, templates as well. So if templates as well as Bicep and Terraform, so you can use that to automate it and just create numerous tests and scenarios when each fails, but try to use it to mimic the real world scenario. So in my conclusion, I would say prepare for the worst. So understand where your vulnerability in your system lies, and how you can best use Chaos Studio to test it, whether it's by using like testing for common faults, by improving architecture of it, to improving the resiliency of your application. And always, you can also do this by benchmarking the reliability of the system, because by doing different tests, you can actually improve how reliable your production system is. And you can also use it with, you can also do this by standardizing tests. So you can create different testing and experiment for like new services before it goes to live. Then you create design, always standardize those different tests as well, infrastructure tests. Now, another good point is that Azure Chaos Studio is, even though it's quite new, it's released 2 years ago, I think, it's one of the, I think it's one of the quite very useful tool, one of the common useful tool in like how you in infrastructure, because it's well, like it follow the well architecture framework as well, and it follow the best practice and scenarios. So when you want to implement Azure Chaos Studio, try to follow the Azure best practice and how you can fit into your scenario workload as well. So yeah, like I mentioned before, Azure Chaos Studio is part of the well architecture framework. So it's a pillar, one of the pillar part of it. So it's part of the reliability of the well architecture framework, and it helps by improving your infrastructure as well. More detail on Azure well architecture framework, you can find it on the Microsoft Learn here. Yeah. Thank you for listening. Any question, please? So if you want to know more about me, just scan this barcode.
Thank you so much, Nicholas.
Yeah, so these are some links, so I can send it to you if you want to get started, if anyone want to get started in Chaos Studio or Chaos Engineering to learn more.
I'm checking if there are any questions on YouTube, but I haven't seen any popping up really. But one of the things that was in my mind, so we both work with AKS, we both love the chaos that is
Yeah.
happening, right? Can we test the pods separate from the nodes, for example? So if I use the VM tests that you
Yeah.
that you showed us, and take that on a worker node, would that then work, or is that only built for normal VMs?
You can do it, but I think it's separate experiment. So you can do it for like AKS for the testing a node, but I don't think you can go deeper like the worker node in the pod itself. You can test the work node and you can test the namespace and those things, but you can test the VMs as separate resource that you can test.
Yeah, so I should make a separate test for the VMs, and
Yeah, yeah.
then a separate test for the
Yeah,
actual
but
pods and
others you can put
such.
it on the same steps. You can put it in the same steps, but it's the same experiment. But different, like lots of like infrastructure. You have a VM, you have AKS cluster, you have different resources, and you can use it's just different steps to at once. But at first, when you do it in your first time, I would just recommend just do it separate tests to just make sure it, it's what you expected before you could put everything in one.
Yeah. And as you said already, like, be careful. But
Yeah.
would you run this in production?
I would run it into like AAT staging,
All
and
right.
then
Yeah.
if you get those tests and experiment already that minimized, then you can put it in production if you got different like environment in production. you can run it one of the environment in production. Could be like pod 01 or pod 02, and take time. And once pod 01 is fine with the test, after you run like AAT staging, then you go pod 02 if you have different production environment.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So once again, thank you for your talk this evening. For everyone else, the next talk will be halfway next month. In the coming days, we will make sure to publish more information and then send out a new notification. So if you haven't yet, please subscribe to our meetup page. You will be the first to be updated on any new information about new meetups. And if you haven't done so already, click on subscribing to this YouTube channel so you get auto updates on new live streams. And in the meantime, you can find me and Nicholas on LinkedIn as well. So if you have any questions left, feel free to reach out. Thank you, everyone. And
Bye.
thank you, Nicholas. Bye.
Bye.